Hey guys, it's Katie from S&B, and I'm with Brandon, and today we're going to install the S&B Cold Air Intake 755068 on the Ram 6.7 Cummins. Before we get started, make sure the engine's off and the parking brake's engaged. For the first step, Brandon's going to disconnect the negative terminal. And on the driver's side, you need a 10mm, and on the passenger side, you need an 8mm. I don't know why they're different, but that's the way it is. To prevent sparks from flying later, you might want to put down a rubber glove or something to stop the terminal from touching the battery. Don't forget to repeat the process on the other side. For the next step, we're going to disconnect the mass airflow sensor and the intake air temperature sensor. Just make sure that you push the lock up and pull the tab. And then do the same for the next one. The wire comes connected to the intake tube, so you just have to make sure that you remove it. We like to use a panel popper. So this next step's a little hard to show you from this angle, but Brandon is just disconnecting the hose clamp from the turbo inlet. And then once he's done with that, there's another clamp on the top of the crankcase hose. For the crankcase hose clamp, you just have to pinch it and slide it up the metal pipe, and then you'll remove the crankcase hose together. So have fun with that, Brandon. So it's almost time to remove the stock intake, and all we have to do is remove this 13mm bolt. Next, we need to lift up the airbox but not completely remove it, and it's held down by some grommets, so you might have to give it a little tug. Next, we're going to disconnect the harness from the factory swing gate motor, and then don't forget the push prong. Now you're ready to fully remove the stock intake. So you remember that step that you couldn't see earlier? Well, Brandon's going to tell you exactly what he did.
Alright, so I know you couldn't see it, but exactly what we did is we had to start by disconnecting the hose clamp from the turbo inlet. After that, we moved this hose clamp on the crankcase hose. You had to pinch it and pull it up the metal tube that's already there. So don't leave it on this hose, you want to move it up the metal tube, and then you're going to pull this tube or this hose off of the metal tube. One thing on the 2016s, if you look, this clamp actually has some rubber that's stuck to the hose, so sometimes you're going to have to tear this piece in order to get it to come off a little bit easier. And if you notice the orientation of this hose, it was straight with it installed in the vehicle. So sometimes when you pull this off, it bends that metal tube a little bit, so just make sure that when you put in the new kit, that this hose is still straight.
Next, we're going to remove the mass airflow sensor and the intake air temperature sensor from the stock airbox. Now it's time to install the sensors into the S&B intake tube. Remember to use the provided hardware and the gaskets, and the sensors only go in one way, so you shouldn't run into any issues. Now it's time to remove the factory swing gate motor by removing these 4 bolts.
Alright, next we need to pull the motor off of the stock airbox. In order to prevent from breaking anything, it's a good idea to take the lid off so you can reach inside and support the door with your other hand. One tip to get it to pull off is you may need to twist the motor while you're pulling to get it to separate.
Next, we're going to install the swing gate motor onto the new S&B intake box using the provided hardware. Make sure you tighten all the bolts down. Next, we're going to install the air dam to the swing gate arm. So if you're looking for maximum airflow, you can go ahead and skip this step. However, in harsh conditions, you might want to attach them because it can result in engine damage. When installing, just remember to put 1 washer on the nut side and 1 washer on the bolt side.
Next, we need to install the silicone tube seal into the airbox. After placing the tube seal into the airbox, make sure that it's properly aligned by aligning the 2 dots at the top of the seal and airbox.
Next, we're going to be installing the silicone inlets into the intake box. So we just want to make sure that the ledge goes into the center channel and that the 2 dots on this one, they line up. Our silicone inlets were built to last, so they're going to take some muscle to get them in there. But once they are, this is how they should look. Now we're going to install the swing gate arm onto the swing gate motor. And so you just want to make sure that the flat part matches the flat part of the pin, which should be facing forward. And remember, they are a one-time use, so after it's on, do not take it off. Next, we're going to attach the provided crankcase hose onto the intake tube, followed by the clamp. I'm going to install the coupler and the clamps onto the intake tube, and remember to only tighten the bottom one. Next, we're going to insert the intake tube into the airbox through the tube seal. Make sure it's all the way in. So this is what your box should look like up until now. And you'll notice that there's a slight gap in between the air dam and the front inlet. And this is because the swing gate motor is so sensitive that if it comes into contact with the filter or the inlet, it could throw a code. Before dropping the intake into the truck, we're just going to attach the other end of the harness to the factory connector. When installing the intake, you're going to start with the tube side first. And then when it comes down to pushing the airbox down, you want to make sure that the prongs are fully in the grommets. After the airbox is down completely, install the retaining bolt. So it's time to tighten down that clamp that we left loose earlier, the one that attaches to the turbo. Next, we're going to install the short hose adapter onto the metal crankcase tube. Pulling this back, you can see that the short hose is attached. Next, Brandon's going to slide the clamp over the crankcase hose and then slide the crankcase hose over the small hose adapter. Next, we're going to reattach the intake air temperature sensor and the mass airflow sensor. Now it's time to install the filter. S&B gives you two options, the dry extendable filter or the cotton cleanable. So with the dry extendable filter, you can blow it out with compressed air. However, you never want to use cleaning solution on this one. With the 8-layer cotton cleanable, you want to use our Precision 2 cleaning kit. And for the purpose of this video, we're going to use the dry one. When installing the filter, you want to make sure that the flat side with the S&B logo is parallel to the lid. Once you have the filter in onto the intake tube, make sure you tighten the clamp down. Now it's time to put on the lid, so start by removing the protective film on both sides. Now that that's off, it's time to get the edge trim onto the lid. And that last step is to install that large clear S&B lid. So now that we're all done, don't forget to reconnect the negative terminals to both batteries, and then you're all ready to hit the road. With the S&B intake, you should see a 54.6% increase of airflow over stock, but still protecting your engine with a 99.55% efficiency rating. And if you don't believe me, you can download the full test results at our website, sbfilters.com.